One of my favorite things to happen in doing tarot readings is when one of the cards, or maybe more than one card, directly address the topic being brought to the cards. And so the reading today is about hopelessness and how to address it, keeping your hope alight, basically. And the each card in this spread answers a specific question or addresses a specific topic. The very first card, which you are seeing laid sideways, um, is answering the question of what obstacle stands in the way of your hope. Um, the card on top of it, which you are seeing upright, or like, just not sideways, but upright, would be the hope itself. What is your hope in this obstacle? Um, the hope being highlighted by that obstacle that you're having trouble to connecting with. The card on the lower left answers the question of how to nurture this hope, and the card on the right answers the question of how to wield this hope. And so, what I'm talking about, where a specific card answers the topic directly, the card answering the question of what obstacle stands in the way of your hope is the star. And the star itself is the card of hope, of having faith in something, and the vulnerability of faith, of hope. Um, and not only that, not only the vulnerability of being hopeful and or having faith, but the discomfort that can come from doing so, especially when you're not used to it, or if you feel like you haven't had enough returns to that faith. Um, so the star being the obstacle itself, it really does highlight to me how anybody who's been called to pile one really does feel disconnected from hope, really does feel like there's too much darkness maybe out in the world or in your around your particular circumstance for you to believe that anything better can happen or be possible. To continue, what your hope in this situation is, we have the Wheel of Fortune. And this is another card that's directly addressing the topic. Well, not really. It's since the first card, everything that we've been talking about right now, the way that the star is answering the question of the obstacle in the way of your hope, and how I'm interpreting that as a lack of faith or feeling disconnected from faith and or hope. And then the Wheel of Fortune is a card of faith, of the messages that come through that aren't concrete, but that we need in order to understand certain things. One needs to have faith in something. What I'm basically talking about is your recognition that something is not a coincidence, but is in fact what we now call a synchronicity. What you can understand is a pattern that the universe, or whatever you have faith in, is delivering to you in order to confirm something to you or communicate something to you. Anybody without discernment, anybody without any faith, would just look at that and see a coincidence, something funny or something cool that's happening, but you understand it to be something more. And if you don't, there's a pulling within you to interpret it as such. And that's what the Wheel of Fortune is. It's faith itself. It's understanding that the universe and everything that exists beyond the physical is therefore non-physical. So it's not meant to be tangible and seen in front of you, and it's not meant to apparate in front of you and then just give you the concrete answers and concrete directions, because then there's no willpower on your part. There's also something to be said about the way that these two cards are laid out, about how you might feel part of the discomfort that you might feel with being vulnerable and being hopeful, being vulnerable and having faith. Part of that discomfort might be looking silly, or maybe there's like this internal recognition that so much of humanity has really moved, at least what's visible to us, has really moved in a way that doesn't really reflect a lot of hope or a lot of faith or a lot of kindness or goodness or whatever you want to call it. And looking around at what's being made most visible to us, it it can be understood why why our faith or hope might start to wane, because the things do seem a little dire, things do seem a little drastic. It's important to understand that we cannot let the crowd, the people around us, even society at large, the world at large, whatever it is, we cannot allow for that to sway us in the wrong direction, to sway us away from ourselves. If you have faith, and I know that you have faith because you're here at a tarot reading receiving wisdom and you haven't clicked off yet, so obviously you have at least enough faith to receive this message, then that means you haven't completely given up on your faith and or your hope. And so you can't really doubt the possibility of a better day, of better circumstances, if you have enough faith to receive this message. If you have enough faith to do this, then you have to understand that that faith, that hope can grow, will grow if you nurture it. And so to continue into how to nurture this hope, we have the Knight of Cups reversed. And so this is kind of giving me two separate messages. The first, and this one's going to apply to all of you, is to stop taking things so personally. It might feel like maybe you have received some lashback or some criticism, maybe in the ways that you've moved in the past. Whether the criticism that you received is directly the criticism that you received was directly towards like the way that you had faith or you had hope. It doesn't matter if it didn't. Like maybe what you were criticized in the past is just like laughing too loud, or some little quirk or something was just like really harshly criticized, and so it put you down in a way that you stopped doing that. And because that happened, it's also made you just hyper aware of how you're perceived. And so there's a direct emotional reaction to being received in a quote unquote bad or wrong way. And so part of the work here is to, like, part of the lesson here for you, part of the obstacle is sitting in the discomfort of being looked at as weird or being criticized about it. But understanding that you're doing so to preserve yourself, your faith and your hope, even if it means that everybody else around you is going to abandon hope, like you're not going to, and you're going to stand on your own. It's about having the courage to stand by your own convictions, basically. Having the courage to stand by hope and by faith and by yourself, for yourself. And what I'm basically seeing the Knight of Cups reversed as is the way that you're moving now is one in which you're allowing those feelings to dictate what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. You're basically avoiding this discomfort of being perceived wrongly. And you need to kind of understand how restricting that is to you and how that is now effectively costing you. I would wager it's costing you more than just your faith or hope. And so in order to nurture this hope, which you're kind of already struggling with, like that's part of the obstacle, is like you do need to make yourself vulnerable to that criticism, to the being perceived in the way that you're uncomfortable being perceived, because that's what it is to be a faith. I mean, you don't have to be religious, but there's merit to looking at religious figures and their plights, and especially in learning of like what it means to be like of faith and maybe even being like devoted to that faith. That does come with criticism and hardships, etc., etc. Not saying that you're going to be crucified for your faith, and maybe that's a good place to start. It's like, being criticized, being looked at as weird or funny is not the end of the world. And if that's what it takes to preserve yourself and your faith and your hope, I'd say that's a pretty fair price. But maybe I say that I'm biased because I'm here, already the weirdo. I don't know. Anyways, to move into how to wield this hope. The Ace of Wands, it's a wand. It's like a stick that you wield to produce magic, basically to create matter from nothing. Okay. Like that's faith. That's like you are the tangible force, the tangible part of your faith. Like, okay, how do I explain this? Like, point blank, what the Ace of Wands is saying here is you'll come to understand, should you take on the task of preserving your hope and your faith through the task of discomfort, you'll come to find how much it actually does. It's there's more there's more to experience through all of this than the discomfort of vulnerability. That's not all that this whole thing is. Like, yes, that is how you get to what's on the other side, but the other side is there. It's not just the trial. It's not just the discomfort. You might be placing a lot of emphasis on the discomfort and how much you don't want to do it, but you have to remind yourself that you're not just doing it for no reason. Not only is it to preserve yourself and your faith and your hope, but it's also there's things to be gained. There's magic to be created. It also kind of comes through as inspiration. Like, you might find that through these experiences of the discomfort of vulnerability, of faith and hope, you might find yourself inspired to create something, some type of art, or you might find that it inspires others. You might be that light that ignites it in others, where once you start moving a little quote unquote funny, you might find that the people who criticized you before were like, wait, that's possible? Oh, I kind of want to do that. And you'll find yourself being copied and mimicked, and you might be annoyed about it, but at the end of the day, if you've inspired someone to be weird, that's a good thing. And here I'm using weird just, to save time. It's just, what I'm talking about, not weird, but like, just moving funny as we're defining it now. Yeah. So that's a lot. I know that it is. I've been there. I think it's part of the human experience to we all kind of have to at one point decide if we're going to play along with society and its expectations and how restricting that all can be, or if we want to do what we want, without hurting anyone, being individual and being comfortable in our skin, even if it means standing against the grain. And so you're at that junction point now where it's like, okay, are you going to restrict yourself and remove half of yourself to participate in those spaces that demand that you do that to yourself? Or are you going to reclaim all of yourself and move through this life as yourself wholly and fully? And then, believe me, there's peace in doing that, living life in that peace. And once you're there, I promise you're blind to the criticisms. Like, that's what's possible. So it's like either you choose yourself or you choose abiding by others and their expectations. Godspeed. I hope to catch you at the next one. Bye. Okay, so the challenge that you're facing is being described by the Ten of Swords, which immediately communicates to me that you are in pain, and not just any type of pain, but pain inflicted by others, by someone else. Either by some type of betrayal or something that they did that hurt you. Whatever the case is, you have been wronged. And your hope in this matter is judgment reversed. And what that communicates to me, that judgment is coming up reversed, is any reversal is not a negation, at least I don't interpret it that way, is not a negation of the card itself, but rather an indication that that energy is present, but that either something is standing in the way of it, or something is shrouding it so that you can't see it, or you're being advised against it. And it is coming through as the latter, as being advised against it, because it is coming through very clearly that, especially with the other cards, that you have every capacity, and I would even say every right, to want to exact some type of response or retaliation, dare I even call it some revenge. Because of the way that you've been hurt, you might even be not even just in your rights, but you might be even properly placed to exact some type of apt response to what has gone on, what has been done to you. Judgment reversed is asking you to pause and to really consider what it might look like for you to save all the time and energy you would be using to exact that response or retaliation, and what would it look like for you to give that to yourself. To kind of move on, and I'll come back to that because the rest of the reading really continues that, but I want to talk a little bit about the King of Wands answering the question of how to nurture this hope. The King of Wands is an energy that understands that he is where he's at, yes, but he can go wherever he wants to go, and where he goes, he'll be okay. All of the Wands court cards really represent that energy of I'm gonna be okay no matter where I'm at. But the King of Wands is one that if this isn't suiting me, I'm the king. I can go wherever I want, and the kingdom will be where I'm at. So that's the energy that you're being invited to take on. Where yes, you have the power, you have the capacity and the right to respond, to retaliate, but what would that really do? I mean, yes, it would make you feel better, but let's pull out a little and start to look at this not only from your perspective, but big picture wise, involving like not just you, but everyone involved. If it's more than one person, and if it's just with one person, the other people involved would be just anybody who would be witness to your response slash retaliation. What would that communicate? It might make you feel good, but all it proves is, and what it would prove and affirm is the power that that individual or those people hold over you and your feelings. And you might not care too much about that, but even though it might appear that way, it's not just an appearance, it's also true. That you are spending all this time to exact that response or retaliation is energy, like basically wasted for like it. Yes, it might make you feel better, but you're being kind of like told that you'll feel a lot better if you don't. If you kind of just what they call win in silence, where you kind of just go do your thing. And the King of Wands is again that promise that wherever you go, you'll succeed. So like go and succeed in silence, and then just let your success be the revenge. Let that be the response. And it isn't something that you took the time to expend towards them, but things that you then invested that in yourself, and then that was just more for yourself. Like you would get to that anyway. Like if you were to spend all this time and energy doing like enacting that response, you would eventually get to the part where you would succeed on your own, because you would then invest that on yourself. But that this message is coming through is basically saying that you do run the risk of prolonging the situation there by spending any more time there. Worst case scenario would be that your whole response, your whole whatever you do might get them to like, give you some attention again, or, want to like patch things up. And then it wouldn't be in earnest. It wouldn't be something that would pan out. You would just be prolonging what the problem was in the first place that caused this issue in the first place. So like you would basically just be wasting more and more of your time, not just with the response, but in continuing engaging with this person that you're being like severed from. So that's what you're kind of being asked to like be a little more aware of. The Magician reversed, answering the question of how to wield this hope. The Magician upwards is one that creates from what they have internally. And so reversed, it's like you really do feel like you want to, or rather it's warning you. It's basically saying, what are you going to put out into the world? What are you going to create from these internal feelings? Are you going to give them more of your time and energy as they have taken from you in the past? Are you going to continue to give them more of your time and energy? Or are you going to create for yourself? Are you going to invest in your own development and betterment rather than continuing to invest in this relationship or these relationships which have proven to be losses, basically? Finally, the Magician reverse is also this idea of finding better outlets for your time and your energy, and also your power, which is yours to be reclaimed if you are feeling like you need to exact some type of response or revenge. I know that can be kind of difficult to hear, but it's important that you understand, like, you wanting revenge, you wanting them to like get it, is you continuing to give them time and energy that they have shown you they don't value. So if they don't value your time and energy in good faith, they're not going to give it any merit when you come angry. And even if they do, that would just be a front. That would just be something that they would give you just to like ease the tension, just so that there's no conflict. But that wouldn't change them. Like, they are going to continue to be who they are. This one's, I know that this one can be kind of difficult. I really, really hope that it helped. Um, and I just kind of want to point out, if you're just the type of individual who's like, it's because there's like, I've seen a couple TikToks, and even before TikTok, like it's been kind of like a meme of, it it takes no energy for me to be a hater. Like it comes easy to me. It comes naturally to me. If that's the type of individual you are, and this whole reading, you kind of be like, well, it's not going to be any trouble for me at all. It's not going to be any, then I don't know that this was the reading for you. And if, you have felt like some parts resonated, then, maybe it is time to start to question just how much that's true for you. It might come naturally to you, but maybe because you've never given anything else a shot. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Godspeed, my friend. I really hope that this helped, and I hope that I can catch you at another reading. Bye. Okay, so it's kind of hilarious the way that these first two cards kind of came out, because not only are they like the perfect pair because we have the sun and the moon, but then also just the way that they're answering the questions that they're answering, because the sun is answering the question of what challenge you're facing, and the moon reversed is answering the question of your hope in that challenge. And the challenge being the sun is one of, in this case, it's one of attention. It's one of a spotlight being shown on you. It's you being like the center of attention, either to one person or to like individuals, whether a specific group or just in general. What I mean by that is, like, if it's one particular person, it could be like a new friendship or just friendship in general, a new romantic interest, like someone that like is paying attention to you. If it's a specific group of people, it could be like a panel of individuals, like you're about to present some research or your thesis. Or maybe it's like a performance where, there's going to be a group of people that you're going to perform in front of. And if it's just in general, like maybe it's you struggle with just being looked at, and maybe that's kind of being a theme in your life where you prefer not to attract any attention to yourself. Another way it could apply is if like you're being called to do something that would put you into like people's attention, like maybe starting like a podcast or a channel, or putting like just uploading some type of content. The point is, you're struggling with this energy of being seen, and if not you, then your work, what you do. And so the moon reversed, showing up as your hope in this challenge, is, the moon is like the shroud of darkness, things being hidden. And the moon upwards can represent like a necessity for that, where sometimes darkness is needed in order to accomplish what needs to be done. Like, not literal darkness, but kind of like, sometimes we need to move in silence. Sometimes we need to not let anybody know. Sometimes we do the work during the day, and the effects happen like where we can't see them until later, when they've grown enough for us to see them. That's kind of like the moon, where the things that we can't see, or the things that we keep from being seen. And so it reversed is like, okay, the time is over. That time is over. The time for shrouding things in darkness, the time for keeping things to yourself, that's over. And so these two cards are perfectly giving this image of like a light being shown on what you've kept in the dark. Or like, even another thing that I'm seeing is like in the morning, when like if you sleep by a window that faces the east and you didn't draw the curtains the night before, you're going to get slammed in the face by the sun early in the morning. And if you're not an early riser, that's going to be like a chaotic awakening, because it's like, bro, what the fuck, I was sleeping. And you're going to go ahead and draw those blinds back because you're wanting to like shroud yourself back in that darkness of comfort so you can go back to bed. And so what these two cards are saying is like, nope, you can't draw those blinds. The time has come. It's a new day. Get your ass up. Let's do what we need to do. Another thing that I'm kind of seeing is that energy, or like the energy that I'm getting from it, is kind of like that infamous bit in the Holes movie where the little girl is like, I'm tired of this, grandpa. And the grandpa's like, well, that's too damn bad. That's literally what I'm seeing the sun as, where you're like, I don't want to be seen. I want to stay in the comfort of like here where no one's paying attention to me. And the universe or whatever is like, well, that's too damn bad. It's time for you to be seen. Like, it's the time for you to not be seen, that's over. The time has come for you to be seen, for attention to be brought upon either you or what you've done or the work that you have been, whatever you've been working on. The card right here on the lower left answers the question of how you can nurture that hope. And we have the Three of Swords, which is an interesting answer because the Three of Swords is one of heartbreak and disappointment. It could be yours. The either, like, if it's that you're trying to start like a podcast or start something on the internet, start some type of content creation, or take this however it might apply to you. Like, part of it might be like preparing yourself for the disappointment of it not immediately being successful. Some people are successful from the get-go, and that's just, phenomenal. And then they would have to then grapple with what it would mean when that attention starts to wane eventually, when they've been so used to success from the get-go. Like, eventually you're going to have to deal with the fact that there's going to be some sort of disappointment. So if you're already uncomfortable with being seen, that disappointment might be enough to like buck you off the horse and you might almost use it as proof, as like, see, I shouldn't have done this in the first place. It didn't even succeed. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with it. Like, that's not what it's about at all. That's part of the message with the Three of Swords. But another thing that's coming through is like, maybe part of your fear of being seen is because you know that the way that you want to be seen or the way that you will be seen is in a way that might disappoint those around you or someone that you care about in some way, shape, or form. Part of the lesson there then is for you to see how you are compromising yourself for someone else. And, sometimes it can feel like righteous and honorable to do so, especially if it's for someone that we love and we respect and who, in essence, has done nothing like to do us harm or who hasn't wronged us. But like, it could be like one of those things where grandpa hates singers and you want to be a singer. He thinks it's a waste of time and he loves you and he's always respected you and he's always been cool. But you know that if you go out and become a singer, he's going to be disappointed or he's going to be mad as hell or you're going to get an earful. So what? Maybe you like an extreme example, and I'm not saying none of the cards are picking up on this, but I'm just giving you an example so that you can kind of get the picture. Like, people come out of the closet because that's them prioritizing themselves and their joy over that of other people. It's an understanding that no matter what we do, regardless of what we do, our joy and our happiness is our own responsibility. And if that's true for us, that's also true for those around us. So it's like, it's us choosing, like, I'm prioritizing myself and I hope that you can too. Where it's like, your joy cannot be hinged on what I do and who I am. Your joy needs to be hinged on you and who you are, like, as a person. And you need to make your peace with that. And it's not so much about like having them understand. It's not about them getting it. They don't have to get it. They can be disappointed. They can be sad. That's honestly irrelevant to you and the task that you're being given here. Because with how to wield it, which is this card on the right, coming through as the Ace of Cups reversed. The Ace of Cups upwards is like your emotions, basically. And the Ace particularly is one of like a singular emotion, in some contexts, specifically in this one. And I'm taking that as like what the Ace of Cups is referring to is the fear that you're feeling. The anxiety that you're feeling around the attention that you're set to receive and what's going to happen once that happens. The consequences of the attention that you'll receive, like what that's going to mean once people kind of know. And so like both of these cards, the Three of Swords upwards and the Ace of Cups reversed, are both cards of discomfort, of shitty feelings, basically. But the way that they're answering the specific questions, like how should you wield this hope, not as a feeling, and the how to nurture it being one of getting used to like discomfort. Why would you be asked to put yourself through this. And the fact that like the two cards answering the conflict and the hope being majors, and then the other two cards being minors, it really communicates to me that the task that you've been given, the work that you've been doing, whatever is about to come to light, it's important. It's of value. It's not just it has, there will be appropriate consequences to what is being brought to light, and you might not see it because it's your own work, it's your own doing. You might not be fully aware of what you've got on your hands, but there's something that will come to fruition from it. It's important what you're doing, and so that's why you're being asked to put up with all of this discomfort. That's why the light is being shown here, because what you've got is important. And so you're being asked, like, hey, could you maybe like put your feelings aside and recognize that what you've got is important, give it some value, and then hold it up regardless of your feelings, because what's important here is the work itself, what needs to be, like, can you put yourself aside for 1 second and just put your work or whatever needs to be shown? Could you give that value for like 2 seconds, just for however long it's going to take for this to be shown? Like, could that be more important for a second? And then you could see what comes when you let these things be shown. Like, could we just do that for a little bit? That's basically what's coming through, is like, yes, it's uncomfortable, yes, it's scary, but like, could you just do it and then see what comes from it? Like, you know, it'll be good things. It's important. Like, so yeah, I know that it can be difficult, and yes, you're being asked a lot. You are being asked to move outside of your comfort zone. You know, maybe more than that. You might even be being tasked with like dealing with some type of phobia, of some type of like attention, and if maybe not like phobia entirely, just anxiety. Yes, that's a task. That's not just a quirk of your life. That's a task that life has kind of constructed for you to like maneuver through, for you to develop yourself through. I really hope that this helped. Godspeed, and I hope to catch you at another reading. Bye.